Welcome back. One of my favorite movies, this will show how young you all are, is Sliding Doors. How many people have seen Sliding Doors? Okay. Watch it this weekend. It's an amazing movie. Gwyneth Paltrow, one of her first movies, and the premise is that she's getting a subway and she misses it by 1 second. And the movie tracks her life if she had made the metro and when she didn't, and how it changed her life, that's one circumstance. And often with the children we see, I always think of sliding doors. I think if they get quality treatment, their life will go one way, and if they don't, it's going to go another way. It's what keeps me up at night, seeing children, adolescents, adults that just miss that train. I had an experience with our next speaker, Dara, which is a sliding door moment for me. I think we often talk about how we impact children's lives, our clients' lives. I think we don't talk enough about how they impact our life, how families impact our life. And Sid and Dara have greatly impacted my life. They've been generous, they've been supportive, they've been wonderful to work with. And so when I asked Dara if he'd present and share his perspective as a dad, his perspective as a business person, as the CEO of Uber, I was absolutely thrilled that he said yes, because I think he has a unique perspective. Last year, we had 3 moms present how it is being a mom. At the end, they said, when do we hear a dad? So Dara was the perfect person. As I've got to know Dara, he's an amazing person in so many ways. Whenever I talk to him, I'm inspired from his business perspective. But I think what's even more touching is him as a dad. And so I want to share with you a picture of him as a dad. He is so incredibly involved with his children. It's amazing. Playing games with them, being with them, just enjoying them. And Sid's that way too. So with that, no further ado, I want to present Dara and have him share his perspective.
Thank you very much. Ron, I didn't tell you, that's actually Jeremy. It's a full service that you guys offer us. So thank you very much for having me here. It's an honor to be the first dad here to talk about the parental experience as it related with AP, and our experience was really second to none. The label of this talk is a parent's perspective and a business perspective. I will start with a parent's perspective, and while I am the person who is up here on stage, I think because I have a fancy job at a big company, I will tell you that the star of our journey as it relates to our children is absolutely my wife, Sydney. She has... I almost beat you to crying, but she's always been first here. She has been absolutely determined to get the best care for our children. And I am very much a supporting character in this story, and she's absolutely the star of the show. But I'm happy to talk a little bit about our journey. So Sid and I are the incredibly lucky parents of 2 wonderful twin boys, Hugo and Hayes. But when they were born, we unfortunately did not feel so lucky. The twins were born very early, 2 months early. Hayes was born 1 pound 7 ounces. Hugo was born 3 pounds 1 ounce. So they were tiny little children. That's Hayes. And then here's a picture of, I think this is Hugo. They were in the NICU for 2 months. And they got out through incredible care, right? The wonders of modern medicine that we have, it was pretty extraordinary. We had an incredibly dedicated group of nurses. Sid essentially lived in the NICU for 2 months, and I kind of came back and forth to visit, to do what I could to support her and to be there for the boys. But it was a real battle for us at the beginning. It was very tough first 2 months, and we came out of it with 2 happy and healthy boys, and we were incredibly thankful for that. But the good news didn't keep going, in that while we wished that the boys were okay, in actuality, they weren't. One of the things that I've learned in business and in life is the power of wishful thinking. And I am very much subject to the power of wishful thinking in business. When you see unpleasant news, the human tendency, and also this is in personal life too, human tendency is to look away from unpleasant news and to only look for news that is good news. The business term for this is confirmation bias. We tend to seek information that essentially confirms our biases. And to the extent that we see information that goes against our biases, we tend not to look at that information. We tend to push it away. We tend to dismiss it. And by the time that the boys were 2 years old, they weren't speaking. They were displaying some odd behavior. And I have to tell you that I was guilty of that confirmation bias. I said, you know, when we talked with our friends and family always wants to make you feel good. They say, you know, they're twin boys. Boys are always stupid when they're young. You know, they'll kind of catch up. They're twins, so they have their own language. That's why they're not communicating with you. So they made all the excuses in the world to essentially confirm our biases, which is our 2 boys who have battled for so long are just fine, that there's nothing wrong with them. But Sid did see what was going on, and you had a situation, Hugo, for example, who is the younger one, but the bigger one, didn't talk, was furious about it. This is a kid who was desperate to communicate, but he couldn't be heard, and he was pretty damn angry about it. Hayes, oldest one, bit smaller, a bit more impacted. He displayed, he would kind of look off to the left. He was always looking for, he was kind of doing eye stim, as we've learned from the AP crew. Whenever he saw patterns of light, he would be fascinated with any kind of a pattern of light. I have to admit, we had twin boys who are a handful, and with Hayes, you know, if he saw a hallway full of light, he'd just run up in that hallway for 45 minutes. And it was pretty tempting to be like, hey, this is a pretty cool babysitter, a hallway for 45 minutes. Like, let the kid go. This is really great. Let's look on the bright side of life. But there was clearly something wrong. And Sid got to it. So we went and got the boys tested. It confirmed, I think, what Sid thought, which is the kids were on the spectrum. At the time, we were living up in Seattle, and we went to a couple of great Seattle institutions to get care for the boys. But unfortunately, even in Seattle, right, this is an enormous tech hub. It's an incredible city, first-rate city in the world. The care that we got was essentially speech therapy and a recommendation from the experts there for us to teach the boys how to sign. And listen, it's cute when kids sign. It's kind of a cute, neat little thing, neat little trick. But that wasn't what was best for the boys. And after a couple of months, Sid said, you know, this cannot be the kind of care or the best of be care. There's got to be something else. So she got onto the internet, did all kinds of research. And I will tell you, from a parent's perspective, the quality of information is just horrible out there. You know, it's so difficult to dig your way through the information about the spectrum, what kind of care works, what kind of care doesn't work. There is no way to find information that truly has authority, unless you have spoken with experts on the field who tell you, look for these particular sources that have authority. And we were just plain old lucky or good or a combination of both. And again, thanks to Sid, she called a bunch of people and kept going and going and going. And through some connections that she made with various people, we were lucky enough to find AP down here in Seal Beach. So we flew with the boys down here, and we met a group of individuals and professionals who had the same expectations of our boys that we did. They saw our boys for who they could be. They didn't baby them for 1 second. And they said that if you put in the hard work and the hard yards, and it's going to be hard work, and it's going to take a long time, and it's going to require complete and total dedication from you over a time frame that is unknown, then maybe we can get something done. That was when Sid said, bye-bye, I'm moving down Seal Beach, and I'll see you when I see you. So I worked from Seattle, and Sid got a place down here, moved down here, and really got into therapy. And I think all of you know, from a parent's perspective, this was not easy. From a kid's perspective, this was not easy. But this is 5 days a week from 8:30 to 3:30 every single day. And I think that the kind of pressure that it puts on parents, your life becomes all about the kids. And it becomes very, very easy to forget your identity as individuals. And it especially becomes very easy to forget your identity as a couple, as lovers, as husbands and wives, because your whole life becomes about your kids. Now, going through this experience and this battle for our boys has brought us closer together as husband and wife and as friend and as partners for life. But I'll tell you, it was tough going through that experience. It was tough throwing everything out, and especially, listen, I had a job and I was working, and for me, it was a weekend thing. It was really, really difficult as a couple, and I think very difficult for Sid to do this. But I think what kept her going were the unbelievable results that we saw from this crew. So we prepared a little bit of video to show you the progression of the kids. Hopefully the sound works through this therapy and kind of the journey that we went through. So let's see if this works. All right, this Hayes.
I'm gonna help you. There's one. You're all done.
This is when I thought they were torturing my kids. So let's see if, oops. Let's try that again.
I'm gonna help you. There's one. You're all done. Let's see, you can go. Yeah. You're okay. You can do it. You can do it. Look, there's 3 of them now. Okay, here, hat. No. Hat. You're not even looking.
At some point they stop crying, don't worry.
I understand. Hat. Good.
Car.
Bag.
Car.
Good looking. Bag. Yeah. Potato head. Good job. Potato head. Good. Hat. Go ahead. Go.
Car.
Good thinking. Last one. Bag. It's looking. Yeah, you got it. Go play. Nice. Cat.
Another bug in the branch.
Nice. Really good try and put it in. That's cat.
Yeah.
Just teaching Hayes how
Do
to
you want
speak.
edamame? Wait, I didn't understand that one. Do you want edamame? Oh, okay. Yes, you can have some.
There you go.
A promising start.
Oh,
Perfect. Do this. Yeah, that's the way to do it.
got it. And this one? Good thinking. And that one? No. Try again. Where's that one go? Good. Nice looking. All done. Go play. Way to go, Munchkin. No, not quite. There it is. Good.
Just teaching M so he can say mom. Most important word in the
Good
language.
job. Way to go.
So a bunch of the therapy was separate, but then we also took the chance of having them work together.
C, where's B? Yeah, good job. Next page. And letter D. And here's the letter E. Everyone say E. Nice going. And here's L-M-N-O. Everyone say O. Good. And everyone, clap your hands. And touch your head. And do, oh, Mr. Sun, Sun, Mr. Golden Sun, please shine down on me. Oh, Mr. Sun. Alright, oh, it kind of looks like a polaroid. Hugo did it. Hugo, put on the frog. Yeah, you're the one with the frog. Nice going. Everyone, clap your hands. And everyone blow a kiss. Nice. Everyone, where's Daddy? There he is. Hayes, put on the elephant. Good looking, Hugo. Yeah. Elephant. Yeah. And Hayes, put on the leopard. Yeah, good. Everyone do this. Oh, is that what the leopard says?
You? Okay, red truck. Good, Hayes. B is for
Ball.
C is for
Call.
D is for
Dog.
E is for
Elephant.
elephant.
Kids would
F
work
is
all
for
day, and then at night Sid would just work with them too, so it never
G
ended.
is for
Gate.
H is for
Hat.
what are these?
Box.
Bugs, but their I is for insects.
Insect.
J is for jam. Good, Hayes. K is for
Who likes cake?
it looks like a cake, but it's jam.
This is less than 2 years working with the AP, and Hayes was singing Landslide.
Turn away. If you see my flicker, and then snow covered is where the leaves like broke me leave. It was too cold. Oh,
Don't worry, you don't have to watch the whole thing, but it is
What
cute.
is love? Can child within my heart was the bird. The sail was singing on sunshine. Life in those seasons
Hugo is more interested in the natural world. So this
Do
is
you want to walk with us?
him talking to the
What are
moon.
you calling again?
I'm calling the moon.
What do you want with the moon?
Does he want to walk with us too?
I think it would be nice for the moon to walk with us.
Is he walking?
I don't know, does he look like he's walking?
Yeah.
Yeah? He always comes with you wherever you go, right?
Yeah.
Only at night, though.
He always comes with me.
What does that make the moon if he only comes out at night?
Like, all kinds of different moons.
Yeah, what kind of moon do we have now?
A crescent moon.
That's right, crescent moon.
We don't have a first quarter moon, a full moon, or a gibbous moon.
Nope, right now it's a crescent moon.
Daddy, I wrote a drawing.
What did you write, Hugo?
I see a cat.
Did you write that?
Yeah.
Did you just read that? Is that pretty cool?
You got to end therapy with a dance party. So it is just extraordinary how far the kids have come. I mean, these are kids who came in who couldn't speak at all, and I will tell you that this is a highlight reel, right? The progression that you see is pretty extraordinary, but the daily progression was, as you know, so much slower. And one thing that is clear to us is that the kind of therapy that these boys needed was intensive. It was 5 days a week. And when we look at some of the other therapy, that as the business has grown, of autism has grown, it just doesn't feel like, from our personal experience of parents, and we're not technicians, and you know, we're not deep in the area, you know, the kind of dedicated work that was required here to get the advancement and the boys ahead, as you see here, and they're further ahead now, was incredibly intense, and was not formulaic. The boys now they're 6 years old. We have moved to San Francisco. The boys have a therapist who acts as a shadow for them when they go to school. She's seen as just another teacher, but she is watching out as it relates to the boys and their behavior. When they come back from school, they work on the weekdays, on and off. And now I think that if you see Hugo, he would essentially be indistinguishable from any other kid, other than his intense obsession with dinosaurs, along with 16 million other 6-year-olds. And Hayes, while he has some behaviors, he is very, very social, but he's fairly rigid in his play. So to the extent that the play kind of doesn't match his expectations, he tends to react in a difficult way, and those are kind of watch-outs that we are working on. And Hugo is not nearly as social. He, much like his mom, if you leave him alone, he'll be alone and he'll be in his own world, perfectly happy. Are these kind of remaining issues as it relates to their being on the spectrum, or are they just kids being kids? We don't know. But one thing that we do know is that I'm not going to be guilty of what I was guilty of, confirmation bias. I think this is something that we have to stay very, very vigilant as parents, watch our kids very closely with the help of AP, and hope that we can continue to help them to have healthy and normal lives. Now, when I reflect on this journey, and it's not done by a long shot, I can't help but really appreciate just how enormously lucky Sid and I have been as parents. The kids have been through, a lot. But we had the ability, we had the means, and we had the will and the luck to go out and find the AP and folks who are just technically and in every way just the best in the business. And there aren't that many people in the world who have access to this kind of care or maybe are even aware of it. And when you look at, the best in the business, autism is turning out to be big business. So this is where I go from the parent version of the talk to the business version of the talk. So if you look at this stock, I ran a publicly traded company, Expedia, for 16 years. This is and we're rumored to go public, the new company that I'm running. This is a chart of the stock market over 40 years. The blue chart is the Dow Jones Index. The red chart is Coca-Cola, one of the best performing stocks in the market. And then there's a new entrant, which is autism diagnoses. Beats them all, right? So if you look at autism diagnoses as a growth industry, this is the ultimate growth industry. It's extraordinary how fast the rate of diagnoses has increased over the past 40 years. And Ron and I were talking about it. Is it that the definition, the spectrum definition, has expanded? Is it now that there's just much more awareness of the spectrum, so there's more awareness, there's more testing, et cetera? It's probably a combination of all those, right? But the fact is that this business, if you want to look at it, has gone from being a small cottage industry to being big business to being industrialized to some extent. We're going from a cottage industry to the Ford Model T that has been mass produced to the Prius. And to some extent, what we are seeing, and the reason why we're involved with the AP Foundation, is that it is our belief that you can't mass produce care of children and individuals. Formulas, absolute formulas, don't work. A cookbook curriculum does not work. A 40-hour training regimen so that you can get more and more care out there is just not that simple. There's a reason why you call it the spectrum. And for us personally, we've seen it with our twins, right? These are identical twins. Both of them on the spectrum, but they couldn't be more different as individuals. Couldn't be more different. Genetically identical twins who are unbelievably different as individuals, and we saw firsthand the care that Hayes needed and the care that Hugo needed, and to this day, the care that these boys need are very, very different. Now, there are certain commonalities in the care, and I see in business as well. Listen, in business, it's very important for you to be aligned generally in the direction that you're going in. But again and again in business, there's proof that actually diversity of thought, having different viewpoints of a situation, not being formulaic in your approach, not being formulaic in your conclusions, creates a better outcome in every single business out there. And companies that are too inward-looking, who only think in one way, who listen to one voice, who think about things one way, those are the companies that fail. Those are the companies who don't protect their flanks. Those are the companies that don't last. And as it relates to individuals, business and individuals are complex entities, and we absolutely, Sid and I passionately believe that these complex entities have to be dealt with in complex ways. While there are certain approaches that are and should be common in terms of how we approach care, the technical care and the measurement, et cetera, these approaches cannot be formulaic, which is why we've gotten involved in an AP Foundation and getting a movement started so that we can deal with the growth and the diagnoses, but deal with it in the right way and not the wrong way. To some extent, the way that I look at it is we have to mass produce the artisans in this area. And if you think about, well, a lot of people say that you can't keep up with this kind of volume. It's impossible to have quality care with this kind of quantity. We believe that it's absolutely wrong, and you have to start someplace. And when I look at kind of examples of that, one kind of example that I look at is actually the German economy. Germany is one of the greatest industrialized nations on earth, and it's an economy that's based on millions and millions of small businesses. There are 2 million apprentices who go into German industry on an annual basis, and they learn from the ground up, and they learn how to build high quality goods in scale with care, right? We're not in this to manufacture Priuses. This is much more important than this. These are kids, these are individuals, and we think that the care, this kind of mass marketing or industrialization of the care that we're seeing does not do our kids justice, and it unfairly gives comfort to parents out there. Because they say, we're getting care and this care is approved by a standardized body, so I believe that as a parent, I'm doing my job. And I don't think that's being fair to the parents, and I think that information that is being given to those parents is incomplete, whether they know it or not. We were lucky enough to have the means, and I was lucky enough to have a wife who was not kind of satisfied with the surface solution, who wanted to go in deeper, who knew, by the way, we got like good care in Seattle, but she knew that it wasn't good enough for her kids, and she dug and we got there. But that's not how you can bring care to the majority of Americans or a majority of these kids all over the world who are getting diagnosed more and more. So we think you've got to start someplace, and you've got to train the trainers, you've got to do it at scale, and if you start someplace, you can do it, and if you see a place like Germany, it can be done. It is an apprenticeship model, and you've got to start from the bottom up to get there. So listen, we've seen it with our own eyes. We've seen it with our own children. Sid and I are all in on this. I can tell you with absolute certainty that the methods that the AP Foundation, that AP uses are extraordinary. They are hard. They take an incredible amount of work and dedication from the staff to the parents. But the results are nothing less than extraordinary. And we think that these are results that every kid on the spectrum deserves. We're all in, and we hope you can be in with us. So thank you very much.